On 12 News at 4, we are all about bringing you solutions and empowering you to better your lives. Every day, we bring some of the Valley's most experienced professionals to discuss trending topics on health, ways to save money and improve your financial life, the law, relationships. We even have an expert on pets. And it's not just us asking the questions, we give you, the viewer, the opportunity to weigh in and ask questions too. Now, we're putting all these segments together in one place for you. This is Ask the Expert.
Welcome back to 12 News at 4. It seems like we are constantly surrounded by technology at home, at work, even at the gym. And now wearable technology has really become the norm, from Fitbits to medical trackers. The device is getting smaller and easier to use. But is there a downside to all of this? It is Feel Good Friday, and Dr. Natasha Bouillon with One Medical is joining us live in studio to discuss the wearable technology and the pros and cons. So what are wearable health devices?
Well, wearable devices give us real-time feedback about our health, and most people think about things like smartwatches and smartphones, but it's actually expanding. So now there's wearable jewelry, rings, bracelets, even wearable clothing that has smart biosensors on it. And I think the point is, when people have wearable devices, we want to make sure that they are able to actually wear them, but also have another function. And that's why now there's like glasses, there's earbuds that play music, but they can also check and monitor your blood. And
yeah, double down and have a dual purpose.
Exactly, so that way you actually put it on every single day.
I knew the rings were starting to become more of a trend. I did not know about the belts.
Yes, yeah, there's belts, there's patches, and these can monitor different things. So they can monitor your fitness, but all kinds of things. So lots of things that you can put on, just depending on your own preference.
I feel like I would not want a wearable device around my belly area. That'd probably be the last place.
Yeah.
What can the wearable devices tell us about our health? I know there are a lot of specifics.
Sure, and you know, most people actually use wearable devices to track their physical activity. So things like steps, things like calories burned. But on top of that, people are also able to track things like their overall health. We're truly seeing an evolution away from just physical health to overall health. Things like blood sugar, blood pressure, heart rate, heart variability, EKG monitoring. But the problem is, the number one question I get from my patients is, what do I do with all of this information?
Correct, and that can be a little bit overwhelming too. Yeah. So what do you suggest for your patients?
Yes, exactly. People have sleep patterns, their blood sugar. What I tell people is to look at the patterns and bring it to your primary care doctor.
Okay.
We're able to synthesize the information and make an action plan that's personalized for you. So for example, I had a patient that was monitoring their blood sugar, and they were noticing, you know, after they would eat, if they sat down and went into a work meeting, their blood sugar would actually spike.
Really?
But yeah, after they would eat, if they walked around the house, they would see a lowering of their blood sugar. And so we kind of made a plan of make sure that you don't schedule work meetings where you're sitting down right after lunch, because it's better for your overall health to move after you eat.
To keep going. Okay, and what about the impact of AI on the wearables?
This is a huge area. So we are seeing so much with AI. Number one, AI can be really helpful with data synthesis, taking all that information, and rather than having a doctor come up with an action plan, AI can come up with an action plan for us. We're also seeing this thing called tracking neural signals. This is fascinating, Rachel. It's this idea of actually using wearable health devices to track your brain activity, and brain waves can start doing things. Like, they've had early research of your brain waves can actually control a robot, and that robot can cook meals, or that robot can type. And so neural signals is kind of the next generation of wearable devices.
Okay.
And then on top of that, I think the really important thing with wearable devices is early disease detection. We've seen wearable devices that can actually look at people's movement and recognize Parkinson's before a doctor can.
Which is incredible.
It's amazing. And even things like women's health. So we've got wearable devices that can track fertility right now. But even when someone's pregnant, not just looking at maternal vital signs, but looking at fetal vital signs and being able to predict things like preterm birth. And so I think the next generation of wearable technology is actually predicting future disease.
How about that? So if you are on the fence about maybe considering wearing one, I mean, that if it runs in your family, or there's any sort of caution you want to take, and maybe that's the answer.
Yeah, and it's not just for young people, because we also know that a lot of young people use them, but wearable devices can also detect things like fall detection for older adults. So lots of uses for all kinds of ages.
Dr. Natasha Bouillon with One Medical is here with us, and we're continuing our discussion about wearable technology. So our first question, coming from Matt in Sunny Slope: how can you choose the right wearable? There's so many to choose from.
Matt, that's such a great question. So many options. So the number one thing I tell people, first of all, figure out what you want to use it for. So you might use it for fitness tracking, which a lot of people do, but there's all kinds of reasons you can use wearable. You might want blood sugar information, blood pressure information. There's also wearables that actually track your exposure. It'll track your UV radiation exposure. It'll track humidity, your pollen exposure. So if you're somebody who has lots of allergies and you want to know how much pollen you're exposed to. So figure out what you want to use it for. And then next, think about what you will actually wear. So, I've got people who they buy smartwatches, they buy these Fitbits, and then they never put them on because it might feel clunky or they're not used to wearing bracelets.
Forgot to charge it, whatever the case is.
Yeah, so think about what you'll actually wear. Maybe you're somebody who will wear a ring, or maybe you're someone who will wear an earbud. So think about what you'll actually use in terms of functionality. And the last thing, of course, is cost, because the cost can have such a wide range, but great question.
Okay, very well. And then next question from Luke and Chandler. I set goals on my Apple Watch. Is it better to track movement, calories burned, or simply set reminders to just get up?
Yeah, this is a great question, Luke. It's kind of the perennial question of tracking movement versus calories burned. Now, the issue is with calories burned, it's not always 100% accurate. Okay. So, if you're working out and maybe you're leaning on some handles or you're doing something to make the workout a little bit easier, it might overestimate the calories that you're burning. It also depends on your own basal metabolic rate, and that can be different for so many people. So I tell people actually track movement because it's something that's individualized to you, and you can actually know if you're trending up or down. And again, for other people, just a reminder to get up, that's good enough for you. And so if all you need is a reminder, that's completely fine.
Absolutely,
too.
Especially the 9-to-5ers, like you're spending so much time at your computer, it's bad for your posture and everything else, so that's great.
Little alarm. Yeah.
Another question from Sharon in Cave Creek, how accurate are some of these devices? So there you go, you just touched on that.
Yeah, it's kind of evolved. So in the beginning, these devices, they weren't super accurate. So there were studies that showed the heart rate might be off by 10 to 20%.
Oh, wow.
Or these devices might actually be overestimating how much you're sleeping. We've come a long way since then. So since they've hit the market, the devices are much more accurate. Not all of them are medical grade devices, so they're not 100% accurate. I tell people, look at trends. So for example, if you start meditating and you're trying to look at your sleep quality, you can see if your sleep is improving and the quality is improving. The number might not be exactly right, but that trend up and down, that's what you're really looking for.
And and you said to watch for those patterns too. So if there's anything alarming, you're mindful of that. So maybe track and keep a journal, or it does it obviously on the phone too. From Jamie in Phoenix, should I use more than one device? So should you wear the Oura Ring and the Fitbit and the...
Yeah, and Jamie, that's really up to you because it depends on what you're tracking. So I've actually found that some people, when they use more than one fitness device, it's almost information overload. And it might be, and it actually sometimes makes people panicked because they'll say, oh, my heart rate was high on this one, but not on this one, and this said this, and this said that. And so if you feel like you'll get anxiety from that information overload, it's better to just stick to one. But if you're using multiple devices that are measuring different things, of course, that's perfectly fine. It's really tailored to what's best for you.
I love that. And lastly, just from Julie in Tempe, she texts in saying, I love my device, it motivates me. So just as you said, sometimes you just need a little reminder.
Exactly. And also sometimes people can share their information with friends or family, and that can be a motivator too of people keeping you accountable.
Oh yeah, especially if you're in the mood for a little friendly competition. How many steps can you get in the day? But don't do that thing where you put it on the dog and get extra credit.
Oh yeah, I've heard of cheaters. I've heard of that cheating.
Well, on this Money Saving Monday, we are in high school graduation season, and once it's over, the kids are off to college. But as we all know, paying for college can be overwhelming. The cost of getting a degree has risen about 40% in the past 2 decades. In 2022, the cost of getting a 4-year degree was just over $30,000 for tuition, fees, room, and board. That's according to Statista. So how do you financially get your high school senior ready for college? Let's ask the expert. Joining me now is financial expert Angelica Prescott. All right, let's start with the FAFSA. Yes. It's supposed to make applying for aid a whole lot easier, but it's been in the news so much, all the meltdowns technically. So what's the latest and what do people need to know?
Well, first of all, there's a range of people who now qualify for more loans and Pell Grants. 7.3 million more students are now able to qualify of underserved communities. So it's a good news system for them now. But there's a timeline now, June 30th. Yeah. You have to make sure that we submit the things necessary, and even how they assess who's your parent, whose income are you assessing, all that is changing. But it's meant to be good for us.
Okay, so let's get into the 5 ways to save money for college, and we want to start with ask for sibling discounts. I never thought of this.
So you have 2 kids, right?
Yes, twins.
So if they came out to choose the same school, you would actually get a discount on their tuition at many institutions just because you have 2 of them there. And they don't necessarily even have to be related. There's some institutions that say cousins who are going to the same places can potentially also get discounts. Parents, niece, nephew, just a relationship being present can allow for discounts across families in different institutions. It's great.
And down the line, travel expenses, that'll save money right there instead of going to
all
2 separate
together.
colleges.
Graduation parties, same place.
All of it, yes, all at once. All right. You also say that people need to calculate cost of living to debt.
Yes, you want to make sure that, hey, if I'm going to study this degree, yes, follow your passions, but what type of lifestyle and income does that degree generally generate for you? So don't take on a $150,000 debt when your job is probably going to pay you starting $40,000 and not that much of an spike in that period of time. So manage your expectations with your passions and what income do they generally make.
Okay, here's another big saving money cost is community college. People need to consider that.
I volunteer a lot at community college in financial literacy classes, and I say that to say they're great stepping stones towards going to get your 4-year degree. They also give you a chance to do a lot of technical training and choose to work for a period of time just to leverage yourself a little bit more, get more experience, and then continue on to get a 4-year degree or a master's. Who knows?
So much cheaper than going, those first 2 years at the university.
English 1.
Yeah,
You
I mean,
can
it's
go to
basic,
community college.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
could. It's a
yeah.
choice.
You also say consider stair-step careers. What do you mean by that?
So let's say someone wants to be a physician, but is not really sure they have the money or the time or the work-life balance that could allow for that. Maybe you can get a technical degree, right? That allows you to get exposed to that field or that industry. So now you're in surgery rooms, you're a surgery tech, and now you're getting an income, and then now you have that reference and that background to say, yes, this is something I really want to do. I'd hate for you to be almost on your last year of medical school saying, I don't even know why I'm doing this. So taking that stair step allows for the debt to be a little bit more controlled. True, honest objectivity about what you want to do, be clear, and guess what? When you get there, you got a whole lot behind you to back it up.
Oh, yeah, no kidding. And that real life experience in that trade.
Yes.
You also say find high value scholarships.
Oh my gosh, there's so many out there. There was a scholarship that a friend of mine got just for dyeing her hair blue with some Revlon product. I kid you not.
What?
There are scholarships out there for even chewing gum. There's scholarships out there, so please don't limit yourself, okay? And worst case scenario, if you have a certain product you really love, maybe you can even write them a letter and say, I'd love for you guys to help me with some of my tuition. I'll test out some of your products. Push the envelope. Right now, everyone is at our fingertips with our phones. Reach out and ask for it. What's the worst? They'll say no?
Well, and I was going to say, in this day and age with influencers, social media, all of that stuff, there's so much money to be made.
Scholarship.
Yeah, wow, how things have changed
I know.
since we were in college. My goodness, Angelica, great tips. Time now to ask the expert. Here to answer your questions live on the air is financial expert Angelica Prescott. All right, our first one is from Suzette from Scottsdale. I keep hearing about FAFSA issues. What does that mean? How does it affect my kids and college?
Well, FAFSA has had some adjustments that have been taking place. That with the scheduling, who qualifies, and making that much wider. So with those changes, they're trying to make sure people go to the websites and check what has changed and how it applies to you. The forms that you have to fill out, way easier supposedly now than ever before.
Yes.
So with those changes comes a lot of people jumping in and possibly having issues with the network.
Right.
So with that said, just take your time, go through it, and let's see what you can get.
And the deadline, June
June
30th.
30th.
Okay, remember that. Mark it on the calendar. Lori from Chandler says, is a bachelor's worthwhile still, or do you need a graduate degree to make a difference?
I think you should dissect what career you want to get into and then go from that point and break it down backwards. Did it require for that individual that has a career and the line and the income that you're trying to achieve requiring these things? Yes or no? And then from there work it back so that you can achieve it as well.
Right, because you don't want to be hundreds of $1,000s in debt.
When all you really needed was this, that, and the right connection in the right institutions.
Right, exactly. Mary from Phoenix says, can I negotiate financial aid and cost of tuition?
Absolutely. Negotiate. All right? One of the cool things about cost of tuition is you could potentially start working, apply for a job at the institution you may want to go to school in, and they'll discount your costs. So let's say if they had an assistant such and such job, or even cleaning the cafeteria.
Right.
If that means that you get a full ride or a discounted tuition, why not? I'll wipe a table to get $100,000
just
debt
to get
free.
your foot in the door and also
you
get
never
a break.
know. Yes,
Ooh, yeah,
so
that's
that
good.
works.
Okay, nice. Glenn says, who really needs college these days versus trade or a tech school? We kind of touched on this, like you called it the stair step.
Yeah,
right?
you have either way. The key thing is, what do we have the budget for? What scholarships have we achieved? Or do you really just want more hands-on and work your way up? There are options for you, and everybody's mind is different. We're all not just one cookie cutter idea. So both could work. It all depends, and it could all happen in the same family.
Yeah, and some people, like you said, more hands-on, more vocational, more tech trade. You know, it just depends. Tina asks, does the name of a school matter? Like Ivy League, more so-called prestigious universities?
Yes and no. I mean, I've seen people with non-Ivy League education really rise all the way to the top.
Yes.
But that requires, of course, that effort, that willingness to apply what they've learned and mold to the environment. Ivy League schools give you something that some other institutions don't give you, connections.
Right.
Right? So that alma mater, maybe the CEO of 3 institutions went to the same place as you did.
Yeah.
So when you come in with the same referrals that they had going up, you may have a little more leverage. But the key thing is you have to show up, you have to bring your best, and you have to be adaptable.
Yeah, work hard.
Yeah.
All right. Great, great advice. And thank you so much for answering all those questions, Angelica.
Always wonderful to be
Great to
here.
have you back, too. Colon cleansers have been all the health rage lately, especially on social media. Have you noticed this? It's a popular alternative remedy that some claim removes waste and toxins from the colon. They may be referred to as detoxes, flushes, juice diets, and bowel cleanses, but at the end of the day, is it helpful or harmful? Let's ask the expert. Joining me now is Dr. Natasha Bouillon, National Medical Director of One Medical. All right, we see this everywhere and so many different brands and kinds and everything. But first off, explain what a colon cleanse is and does.
Well, this is a process where fluid is essentially flushed through the colon, usually by a small tube that has low pressure. And most people will use water, and sometimes that water is mixed with things like coffee or even herbs. Now, there's another way to do a colon cleanse, and that is by taking a supplement that often is laxatives or teas, and that vigorously expels contents from your colon. And most people that I hear that do this, they're often doing it because they want to remove toxins from their colon, they want to be healthy, but the problem is, you know, there's no evidence that this actually improves gut health, and in fact, there's a lot of risks.
Yes, and that's what I want to get into, the risks, because they probably outweigh the benefits.
They
right?
do, yeah. So, you know, there are a lot of risks with this. Oftentimes they're done in non-medical facilities. They might be done in wellness centers. And really, our colon was designed to hold water and store stool, as well as absorbing that water into our body. And so when we flush it with high volumes of water, what ends up happening is it throws everything into imbalance. And so we might suffer from dehydration or an electrolyte imbalance. What this also does is it sometimes wipes out good bacteria that exists in our gut. And so we've seen cases of people getting infections after they've done colon cleanses. And now the other risk is rare, but there is a chance of someone having a tear or a perforation in their colon because the tissue inside our body is not as, you know, strong and thick as the tissue outside of our body. So lots of risks to this procedure.
Okay, so what are ways that people can improve their gut health in a more healthy way?
Yeah, there are alternatives, and this is the thing that people are talking about all the time, especially now. We are seeing rates of colon cancer increasing. It's alarming because it's especially happening in people under 50. So everybody wants to know, how do I keep my gut healthy? And it's really about going back to the basics. It's about staying hydrated, making sure you've got plenty of fiber in your diet. This is really important and key. It's exercise. Movement helps our gut in ways that people don't even realize. Even 3 times a week for 30 minutes, going for a brisk walk can make a great difference in your gut health. Limiting things like red meat and instead focusing on lean meats like chicken or fish. And then trying to avoid ultra-processed foods. Those are, of course, not good for us. We know that. And it might increase our risk of colon cancer in the long run. And then making sure that your diet is rich in things like fruits and vegetables, whole grains, especially foods like fiber, which I think none of us get enough of.
Right. You know, in recent topics when we had you on, we also talked about probiotics and prebiotics and everything. So when you talked about gut health, it reminded me of probiotics.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's, you know, we do want to make sure that our gut has a nice balance of our probiotics and make sure that we've got good bacteria as well as, you know, any of the bad bacteria that we need to remove. And that's what people are trying to do with these colon cleanses, but it ends up wiping out all of the bacteria, even the good bacteria that you need. And probiotics might be helpful in maintaining your health, but it doesn't mean that every single person needs to take a probiotic.
Right.
Some people might benefit from it who have digestive issues or loose stools or constipation or bloating, but the average person who feels fine, they don't need to take anything. Like, save your money and mostly just focus on eating healthy, exercise, limiting alcohol. Those are the things that make a difference in the long run.
Is there a risk, though, if you do take a probiotic when you don't need it?
If people take probiotics that they don't need, the risk is to your wallet, because it really, there's not lots of harms to you, but for a lot of people, they're taking it and it's really not doing any benefit. It's just a waste.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's a money-saving Monday.
Money-saving segment.
All right. All right. Great info, Natasha. Thank you. Time now to ask the expert. Here to answer your questions live on the air about colon cleanses is Dr. Natasha Bouillon. All right. Our first one from Diane. I have seen so many viral TikToks advertising Miracle Moo for gut health. Would you recommend this as a gut cleanser?
Oh, that's such a great question, Diane. So Miracle Moo, it's actually bovine colostrum. So for people who don't know, mammals, after they have a baby or a calf, the initial milk that they produce is called colostrum. It's rich in antibodies and nutrients. And what some folks have done is they've taken this bovine colostrum, turned it into capsules, and they're selling it. So I think a lot of people think this is really great for my health, but the research shows that if you have a gut infection and take bovine colostrum, it might help reduce the duration of that stomach bug. But just taking it every single day on a regular basis doesn't actually have any benefits.
Oh, so you could be wasting your money.
You're just wasting your money.
It's not going to harm you, though.
It's not going to harm you. I mean, it's worth a try if you want to. It's unlikely to help your gut health. It's unlikely to be a good cleanser. But if you have a stomach bug and you take it, it might be useful.
Oh, okay. And I do see a lot of the bovine
colostrum. Yeah, a lot of advertising.
That is so popular right now. Okay. Haley says, what are some good supplements to take to improve your gut health?
Yeah, well, I'm glad you asked this because there are some supplements that do make a difference. Again, not for everyone to take, but for people who are going through constipation, magnesium is something great to take because magnesium increases the fluid in your intestines.
Doesn't that help with sleep too?
It can help with sleep as well. And so it can give you some regular bowel movements. And so that's a beneficial one. And then the other thing I tell people, vitamin D. This one's really interesting. There's some early research that shows people who have lower rates of colon cancer, they tend to have higher levels of vitamin D. Now, we don't know if you take a lot of vitamin D, is that going to prevent you from getting colon cancer in the future? But there is a lot of research showing vitamin D might be kind of a key unlock for lowering risk of cancer. So that's another supplement to think about.
That's good to know. All right, Bob in Scottsdale asks, are there any downsides to taking a glass of water with 2 teaspoons of psyllium at bedtime?
Yeah, so psyllium is it's soluble fiber. And so this is actually completely fine to take because soluble fiber can help give you regular daily bowel movements, so it is helpful. But the thing I tell people is if you just eat fiber, it has the same impact. So things like avocado, lentils, oats, if you just increase fiber in your diet, that will help give you regular bowel movements, but psyllium is completely fine to take.
And isn't food always the better choice?
Food's always the better choice than a supplement, so if you're able to get fiber naturally through foods, that's a better route.
Christy from Phoenix says, are there any specific herbs you can add to your food that improve gut health?
There are a couple, Christy. This is also a great question. Ginger is a wonderful herb. And so, what we find with ginger is it helps decrease fermentation. So a lot of people will take ginger. It helps decrease things like gas and bloating. I think this is like a little remedy for people who have nausea, pregnant women who have nausea. Taking some ginger can decrease that nausea. Turmeric is another one. So it's a known anti-inflammatory. It can help with regular digestion. Here's another interesting one. So pancreatic enzymes, so digestive enzymes. Our pancreas makes enzymes and helps break down carbs and fats and proteins. Some people have gas and bloating because they don't have great enzymes. And when they take digestive enzymes, that can make a difference. And then I would say the last herb I recommend to people is peppermint oil. So peppermint oil, we know that it helps people who have IBS, inflammatory bowel syndrome. And so for folks who've got like issues with digestion, issues with bloating or gas, when they take peppermint oil, sometimes they get relief. So that's worth a shot. Again, all of these are not for everybody. They're just for specific conditions.
Right. And I'm just curious, the peppermint oil, I mean, do you just like squirt that on your food?
Yeah,
I don't know.
People will take like supplement drops. And also it's different than actually just like eating lots of peppermint. So that's not
Okay.
the same thing. Peppermint oil, it's an extract, and so you can add it to your food, you can add it to drinks, but it's different than regular peppermint that people think of.
Interesting. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Irene from Chandler asks, how do you know if you need to cleanse?
Yeah, you know, and this is a good question to ask, because there are people who say, look, I've got constipation, I've got some issues, maybe a cleanse will help me. And it's an important reminder that a cleanse, a colon cleanse, is different than something like an enema. So we've heard of enemas. Enemas is when you flush the lower part of your colon really gently. And some people do need an enema when they have constipation because it helps them generate their own bowel movement.
Okay.
Now, most people though don't need a colon cleanse. And so if you're wondering like, what can I do? Talk to your doctor. But I would say most people don't actually benefit from an overall vigorous colon cleanse. And remember, an enema is just a sprinkle of water, whereas a colon cleanse is gallons and gallons of water flushing through your colon. It's really not something I recommend to people.
Okay, one less thing to worry about.
One less thing
especially if
yeah.
you don't need it.
Yes, yeah,
Oh,
just
right.
eating healthy exercise. It always comes down to that.
Yes, I know, really. Natasha, wonderful info. Thank you so very much. This Wellness Wednesday, we are turning our attention to mental health, as May marks Mental Health Awareness Month. So today we want to talk about journaling. Maybe it's something that you've never done, have wanted to do, or maybe just stopped because life got just too busy. But we're going to get into the benefits of why you should keep a journal. Joining me now is therapist Juliana Liddon. All right, first off, describe what journaling really is.
Basically, it's taking everything in your head and putting it down on paper. It's also a type of diary.
Yes.
Really. So
Well, and
it helps a lot.
I was going to say, you know, back in the day, I had a diary. Is that still considered like journaling?
It is. It's a type of journaling. It really depends on the type you want to do. We'll kind of get into that, you know, how you want to prompt yourself.
Right. Explain how it's a great way to relieve stress.
Telling you, I encourage my clients all the time, when you are spinning with anxiety,
Yes.
the best thing to do is get that spinning down on paper, because your prefrontal cortex cannot do two things at once. So as you're writing, it pauses and you can write down all that stuff. And then you can do another side of the paper and kind of analyze, how am I kind of off the radar here? How am I going off the scale, and kind of compare?
Right. Talk about mindfulness journeying.
Okay.
Journaling.
Journaling.
If I can
Yes.
spit it
Yes.
out. Mindfulness journaling. Yes.
That's basically just where you have your journal with you all the time. And when you are in a space where you want to find out what's happening kind of in your mind and body at any given moment. So you might open it up and say, you know, how am I feeling right now?
Right.
And just kind of journal.
Okay.
It's a check-in.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Because a lot of times I just feel like, you know, there's so much in your head. And a lot of times people may think that, oh, you know what, we'll just do something to take your mind off, take a walk, do whatever. But journaling is a better venue, a better way to release.
It is, because you can work on your emotions. You
Yeah.
can work on things that really, your goals, all kinds of things you can get there. And when you refer back to it, it's really powerful. It's very cathartic. You can see how far you've come.
Right.
You can see what you need to continue to do.
Yeah, that's a good point, looking back on and reflecting on it.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that people can get started?
Yes. So if you want to, like I was saying with your emotions, you can really, that's that kind of mindfulness journaling, right? Maybe you want to look at some of your challenges. What challenges do you have? Maybe it's something like, oh, I really need to work on this negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And the loving myself is so huge, as cliche as it is.
Right.
Writing down what you love about yourself, because when we truly love ourselves, we can give more of our love away.
Right.
It's so important. And then bigger obstacles. So things in your life that you know keep showing up, right? And you want to get it down, and maybe talk about a few resolutions with that and keep working on it. Just keep
Right.
chipping away.
And probably just try to be more solution oriented. You know, when you write down those problems. Yeah.
It's so good to do. It really does, though, get it out of your head.
Okay, I need to work on that one. And say mindfulness journaling.
There you
All
go.
right. Here to answer your questions live on the air about journaling is therapist Juliana Liddon. All right, our first one comes from Leslie from Phoenix. What is the difference between having a journal versus a diary, or is it the same thing?
It kind of is the same thing.
Yeah.
I think in our day, we maybe used to diary a little bit differently, you know,
Yes.
like Dear Diary and, you know, going
Yes,
through it
I
with
did,
kids.
yeah.
Right, right. But it is a form of journaling. Journaling today, we can provide more prompts for ourselves. You know, we can set up, okay, I'm going to talk about, like we said, mindfulness. I'm going to talk about my
Right.
emotions or what's
Anxiety,
going on.
whatever's
Yeah,
going
exactly,
on.
exactly.
Okay. All right. Esther in Mesa asks, what is your recommendation to find a new therapist, and how do you decide whether you need a therapist or a psychologist?
Okay, this is, so it depends.
Okay.
If you want to use your insurance, you can go start that way and start to look at who's, you know, provided. But I say to people, you call this person, they're working for you. So you need to interview them and go through until you find somebody that feels like it's a fit.
Yeah.
The other thing is the difference between the therapist and psychologist is more of a degree, meaning the psychologist is a PhD.
Okay.
They might typically be a better diagnostician.
Right.
So, but it's really about a fit. I say
Yeah.
it's about a fit. See, I do a lot of coaching too. It's about you know, if
You
you
got to
feel
find the right
comfortable.
match.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
do.
exactly. Who understands you and can help you. Emily asks, what are some examples of topics to journal about? Oh, I like this.
Well, you can journal about some of those things when you feel like you're really stuck and you really want to look at what is creating that stuckness, because people think, oh, I'm stuck because I'm in this environment, I'm in this landscape, I'm in
Right.
this town, I'm with this guy, whatever it is. But it's really about what's going on in your internal world.
Okay.
So the better you can get at writing down how you're feeling,
Yeah.
why you're feeling stuck, what's, you know, causing some of that, that's going
Right.
to make a big difference.
Yeah, and maybe give you some clarity.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, Tanya from Phoenix says, I would love for my daughter to start a journal. How do I get her to start and make it a habit?
So I recommend for parents that you start the prompt. So you might say, hey, why don't you maybe talk about or write about what some of your goals are for today at school?
Oh, I
Or
like that.
maybe, you know, something else related to that.
Yeah.
And that really helps them kind of get in the groove of how this is going to look.
Yeah, with my daughter, it's like hit or miss. You know, we'll go on a camping trip, and I'm like, Zoe, why don't you write about, you know, what was your favorite part
Yeah,
or whatever?
yeah.
And then she doesn't, and it's like, oh, okay, that's it. Next camping trip, like 3 months later.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
an idea too.
Yeah,
But you know,
something.
it's whatever parents think of what you want them to start looking at. It can be related to school or, like you said, travel, all kinds of things.
Right, okay. Darlene says, sometimes when I write to release my anxiety and emotions, I get all worked up again. How do I prevent this and make it more cathartic?
It is. So I started to kind of talk about a little bit of that in the segment with this piece of paper lined down the middle. When you get anxious, a lot of times we go down that hole. So start writing down all those anxious thoughts. But on the other side, what's super powerful is write what maybe isn't true about that. So for example, when we're in that hole spinning, when we are stopped in that pause, we can see that maybe some of that isn't necessarily true. Right? It's become exaggerated. It's become bigger than life.
Right.
And at that time, you can kind of stop and go, whoa, okay, I could put the brakes on for a minute.
Yeah. And then you also talked about reflecting and how big of a difference that can make too.
It's so big
Yeah.
when you start to write and you're creating this over time.
Mm-hmm.
Going back, I have clients do that and they come in, hey, look back last month.
Yeah.
See where you were.
Right. And how much you've grown.
Right. And
Yeah.
it always feels so good to see that progress.
That's huge.
Yeah,
Okay, I want to start journaling now.
I know.
Okay, I'm going to do it for real. Health news now. Sunscreen is making headlines with reports surfacing that products sold in Europe, Japan, and South Korea offer more protection from the sun than those sold here in the U.S. The reason? The FDA's ability to approve the chemical filters in sunscreen sold abroad. Apparently, the FDA is strapped to a law dating back to 1938 that requires sunscreens to be tested on animals and classified as drugs rather than as cosmetics. So Americans are not likely to get those better sunscreens, which block the UV rays that can cause skin cancer and lead to wrinkles. Joining me now is dermatologist Dr. Alika Haas of Mayo Clinic. Alika, this was surprising to me. What do you think about this?
Well, I think it's a very valid concern, especially in our society. We often equate more to better, especially when it comes to skincare products. But safety and quality should really come first. So the FDA regulations of classifying this as a drug requires rigorous testing of sunscreens, and that can be expensive and it can take a lot of time. That's why we don't have a lot of these products. But we do have a lot of great sunscreens here in the US, and just sticking with a physical blocking sunscreen will give enough UVA protection to fight skin aging and skin cancers.
So bottom line for consumers then, I mean, what are they to do? Is it still perfectly fine to use, products made here in the US?
I do think it's perfectly fine. And the truth is that most people are not using sunscreens adequately, and they're not taking all of the sun protective measures that we recommend. So actually keeping a sunscreen by your toothbrush, putting it on every single day, just like brushing your teeth, is actually the first step. And if a lot of people start doing that, reapplying when they're outdoors, consider sun protective clothing, covering their arms, neck, chest, and wearing a big hat. That will give enough protection, and we do have safe and effective options here.
Yeah, I like that. That's a nice little tip for people who forget. Keep it right next to your toothbrush. Make it part of the routine.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right, Alika, thank you so much. Well, today we are taking a closer look at hyperpigmentation. It's what happens when certain parts of your skin appear darker, either in small patches or large areas. It can even affect your entire body. And treatment for hyperpigmentation is really growing. Last year, the global market was valued at $4.8 billion. And in the next 10 years, it's expected to double, according to Future Market Insights. So what causes it and what can you do about it? Let's ask the expert. Dermatologist Dr. Alika Haas of Mayo Clinic is back with us. First off, explain what hyperpigmentation is and the different kinds.
Exactly. So hyperpigmentation is a broad term describing areas of skin that are darker compared to the surrounding presumed normal skin. There are three main types that we think about.
Yeah. So sun damage, post-inflammatory, and melasma.
Exactly. So sun damage, that's what I like to call the freckles and speckles. So these are the small uniform brown spots that we see on sun-exposed areas: face, neck, chest, hands. Melasma is very different. Melasma we see as bigger areas, usually on the forehead, sides of the face, upper lip. And we see that more in women, and we see that in skin of color. It can often be hormonally driven, so sometimes we see it in pregnancy, and we call it the mask of pregnancy.
Oh, interesting. And then the post-inflammatory.
Yes, so post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation is exactly how it sounds. Any sort of injury or trauma to the skin, like a scrape of the knee in a child, popping a pimple, or having something like a chemical peel done and getting sun exposure, can lead to pigmentation after the skin has been inflamed.
Okay, so how do you prevent it?
So prevention of hyperpigmentation is really sunscreen, sunscreen, sunscreen.
Yeah.
So putting sunscreen on every day, reapplying when outdoors, seeking shade and avoiding the peak hours of sun exposure between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., using sun protective clothing. That's the most important thing you can do to prevent hyperpigmentation.
Something interesting to me, you mentioned in this graphic, tinted sunscreen. And I think I read that before too, that tinted is better than the regular sunscreen when it comes to, hyperpigmentation. Why is that?
Yes, so studies have shown that tinted sunscreen, which contains iron oxides, can protect our skin from blue light. So that's indoor lighting, screens, computers, tablets. And that blue light has been shown specifically in skin of color to lead to hyperpigmentation.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Let's talk about some treatments, because there's a lot of ingredients that we should be looking for, but what can we do?
So there are a lot of ingredients over the counter that can help with hyperpigmentation. I think first and foremost, if a patient has, or a consumer, somebody watching today, has a discrete brown spot, just one spot located on their face or a sun-exposed area that maybe has a couple different colors in it, it's a little asymmetric, it just popped up, that should always be looked at by a dermatologist to make sure it's not a skin cancer before embarking on some of these other treatments.
Yeah.
Now, if it's not that, and it seems like more of these other conditions we talked about, there are a lot of products over the counter that can help lighten and brighten the skin.
Okay.
These contain things that help disperse pigmentation or get rid of pigmentation or that melanin in the skin. So antioxidant products like vitamin C, kojic acid, niacinamide, azelaic acid, and then things that resurface the skin. So these kind of exfoliate. These would be vitamin A products like retinol or alpha hydroxy acids like glycolic acid.
Right, interesting. Now, when do you know that you should do maybe a laser treatment? Because, you know, that seems a little bit more on the extreme side. So when do you know which treatment is best?
Great question. So if you've tried over-the-counter products and they're giving some improvement but not giving you what you're looking for, then there are prescription strength creams, so those that contain hydroquinone. This is an ingredient that is the best at stopping that pigment or melanin production.
Right.
So we can give prescription creams with that. And then there are a lot of light and laser devices that can be used, but they have to be used cautiously. In some settings, like skin of color, they can actually make pigmentation worse. But if they are used in the right skin type with the right device and done by the right hands, we can get beautiful results with sun damage, post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation, and in melasma, which can be very stubborn.
Wow, so much to know. All right, Alika,
Yes.
that was great info. Thank you so much. Time now to ask the expert. Here to answer your questions live on the air about hyperpigmentation is dermatologist Dr. Alika Haas of Mayo Clinic. All right, our first one comes from Jamie in Phoenix. Do these turmeric and kojic acid foaming cleanser pads help? Because I see these ads a zillion times a day. Do they?
Okay, so turmeric is a great ingredient in the kitchen, and it's even great as a supplement. It's anti-inflammatory, it's an antioxidant, but it can stain the skin yellow. So I would be really cautious using this on my skin because you might have to take off a yellow stain with some harsh alcohol after.
Ooh, it sounds like it would make it worse. All right, Alika. Okay, this viewer says, I have melasma. I've tried everything from prescription drugs to over-the-counter products. Nothing has worked. How can melasma be successfully treated specifically for Black women?
So this is a great question. Melasma is very difficult to treat. It's a chronic condition. Pigmentation comes and goes despite using treatments. It's not something we can ever get to go away completely. But I'd have a few questions for this woman. Is she on any hormonally acting medications? Even an IUD can cause melasma. Is she using adequate sun protection? Has she had her thyroid checked? Sometimes thyroid disease can make melasma not respond to our treatments as well.
Yeah.
And then the last thing that's specific to Black women, hydroquinone is our favorite ingredient for melasma, but if it's used in high strengths for a long period of time in darker skin types, it can actually cause another type of discoloration in the skin. It can cause a blue-gray discoloration in the skin called ochronosis. And every now and then we see this in darker skinned patients that think they're still treating their melasma, putting hydroquinone over and over, higher strengths to try to get it to go away, but they actually have this more complex condition.
Wow. Okay, those are all really good questions to ask. And I would say, like, she probably should see her dermatologist.
You should get evaluated and make sure it's not ochronosis. If it's not, we do have devices and lasers that can actually be used safely in Black patients.
Okay, all right, good to know. AJ from Phoenix says, how can we get rid of dark spots, hyperpigmentation on the face from acne scars?
Again, really great question. Post-inflammatory hyperpigmentation from acne scars can linger for 6 to 12 months. The most important thing is to not pick at the pimples if you have active acne.
Yeah.
I like to use something called a hydrocolloid dressing. It's like a little pimple patch. It's not medicated, but it helps heal the pimples and keep the hands off of them. So you put them on right before you go to sleep, and usually in 24 to 48 hours, that pimple has shrunk and it hasn't been picked to cause this extra inflammation.
Okay, doesn't it like pull the stuff out of it?
Yeah, it just.
I think I've seen those little patches.
Yeah, they're fantastic. Now, if the hyperpigmentation is there, we do have devices and creams that can help to gently remove some of that pigmentation.
Interesting. All right. Cheryl asks, is the red light therapy mask good for hyperpigmentation? I've wondered this too, because we've done a red light therapy, interview before.
Right. You know, I'm not a huge fan of the red light masks. While they can maybe stimulate some collagen production, they're very expensive, and the quality of improvement you're going to see in your skin is very minimal. I would use ingredients, creams over the counter prior to using a red light mask for hyperpigmentation.
Okay, great to know. Well, you just saved a bunch of money. All right, Alika, thank you so much. I know we have more questions, so I'm going to cut you loose and you're going to go to our green room. So thank you so very much. Thanks for watching. Be sure to follow our YouTube channel for more content and watch the Ask the Expert segment weekdays at 4 p.m. and right here on our 12 Plus app.